TopMedTalk.
Well, hello and welcome to TopMedTalk. We're here at EBPOM London 2023 for the World Congress of Perioperative Medicine and our annual EBPOM London meeting. I'm Desiree Chappell. I'm your host today, and I'm joined by my co-host, Professor Emeritus Monty Mythen. I can't say that. You say professor.
Professor's fine.
I know.
Or
I know.
Monty's
You still,
fine, actually.
Actually, Monty's way better, but
I think we're on first name terms now, Desiree.
After all these years, I guess I could call you Monty now.
After nearly 2,000 podcasts, we're about.
It is. That's right. Yeah, nearly. Well, we also have Professor Saul Aronson.
Yeah, please call me Professor.
Rob. Saul, thanks for joining us as well.
Always good to be here.
Yeah. So, Monty, tell us a little bit more about EBPOM for those who may not know about the organization.
So this is evidence-based perioperative medicine, and somehow shortening it to EBPOM seemed to work in some way. It started over 20 years ago when I came back from the States, where I was on faculty at Duke, which is where Sol was until relatively recently. Got very excited about this idea of perioperative medicine. Almost no one was talking about it at the time, from the moment of contemplation to full recovery. Stimulated by an article by Ross Kerridge from Australia, writing in Anesthesia News, and chatted to colleagues and said, what about perioperative medicine? And found a bunch of them that were very interested. And we said, well, if we're going to get a movement going, we need to have a meeting. The first one we had was actually in Dingle in Ireland in 1999. Right. And why Dingle in Ireland rather than here in London, where University College London
a question
is?
I was going to ask.
So I came back and I said, look, we should have an annual conference. Why don't we have one in London? They said, oh, that's boring because we all live here. I said, well, what about having one on mainland Europe? And they said, well, we're not sure about that. I said, well, how about Ireland then? Because that's where my parents are from. They said, that's a great idea. And that's it. That's the history behind the whole thing. And 24 years later, for the Ireland meeting, we've been doing evidence-based perioperative medicine. And I think it's become a reality now, perioperative medicine.
I think so, yeah.
Heard a lot about that earlier today. And the London meeting followed shortly after that because we couldn't get away with the fact that people said you should do a little bit around UCL. So here we are.
Yes.
You're all very welcome.
Before we get to introducing our guests, I wanted to take a moment. This year, EBPOM has partnered with the World Congress Prehabilitation Group, then having the World Congress of Prehabilitation. Just real quickly touch on that, if you will.
So that particular segment, some people say prehabilitation is not different to straightforward preoperative preparation, but the prehabilitation group argue that it is sort of fundamentally different. It's more the nutrition, it's more the exercise training, it's more the mental resilience preparation, as distinct but overlapping with anemia correction, improving diabetes, addressing pre-existing comorbidities. So they very much concentrate on that, exercise programs, structured exercise programs, nutritional supplementation and mental resilience. And they've got to a point whereby they've created enough evidence for it to be adopted into the National Health Service as a centrally funded service. So they believe in the value proposition in the UK and now in other countries, and it's a prescribable preoperative intervention. So that's great. So they've been hanging out together talking about spandex.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. I'm going to let that one just.
Does that translate? I don't know.
No, but I wouldn't say really. That it goes over well. Yeah. So, Monty, I do want to say some of this is very niche, very special, and we really couldn't do what we do and get this message out without the support of those who have believed in us and willing to support it, through sponsorship, through grants and things like that. And I think it's always important kind of to give a shout out to those folks because we couldn't do EBPOM in these other meetings, and we can't do TopMedTalk without sponsors as well.
Free open access medical education.
Yep.
We went down the route of not asking for subscription so that we could equally share the information around the world, irrespective of people's ability to access it. Most people seem to be able to get access to podcasts, so we chose that route. And therefore, we needed to seek donations to support that. We've had those donations from very many different sources, but our main consistent donors are our industry partners. No strings attached. Grants, basically, to TopMedTalk.
Yes.
It's wonderful they do it.
It is. So we just want to give a shout out to our sponsors, our platinum sponsors, Medtronic, GE Healthcare, Edwards Life Sciences. All of those folks have made it happen and have been consistent supporters of TopMedTalk through the years.
And there's a longer list that could always be longer.
It could always be longer. That's true. So if you like what you hear,
we never run out of things.
We don't. So without further ado, I do want to introduce our next guest and really get into a very interesting conversation that we haven't talked so much about here on TopMedTalk. We actually have Liam Heinz with Medtronic here to join us to talk about sustainability. Liam, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Desiree. It's great to be here. My name is Liam Heinz. I'm the operations leader for respiratory interventions, the respiratory interventions business in Medtronic, which is part of the Medtronic family. We produce all of the ventilator products in Medtronic. We also produce a range of specialty airway products, core airway products, endotracheal tracheostomy tubes, and of course the video laryngoscope, a really important part of our portfolio and a real growth area for us in the industry.
Today, we thought it was really important to have a conversation around a topic that I think is, more and more important in the medical device industry and just in the industry and in medicine in general is sustainability and, the environmental impact that a lot of the things that we do every single day have.
Yeah, the discussion is very timely because, I suppose sustainability is no longer a tick box exercise for companies and organizations. Mm-hmm. It's an absolute requirement, and companies really have to think very, very seriously about and take very seriously their responsibility in terms of sustainability. And it is part of that whole corporate social responsibility that companies have to embrace. Medtronic are very, very aware of it, and we've taken, I think, an interesting approach in that there's a top-down and a bottom-up approach in terms of how we look at and how we implement sustainability in the organization and how we approach it. I suppose at a very high level, we introduced the whole concept of sustainability through sustainable policy, to having a policy, having high-level KPIs, so we measure what we're doing, what's our carbon footprint, what impact we're having on the environment. But I suppose the more important than that, we've also started to help and empower employees to develop a sustainable culture. And that's really, really important because, just coming at it from a top-down perspective doesn't really guarantee success of anything or any initiative. The approach we're taking, it's the 3 I's we call it, but introduce, incubate, and instill. And starting off with the introduction, as I mentioned, policy, high-level KPIs, incubating by running some pilot programs, some green initiatives, early stage sustainability programs, and then instilling, which is creating the culture. Mm-hmm. And that's the most important part of this. It's creating the culture of awareness of sustainability, developing employee resource groups. So allowing employees to be in control of their own destiny from a sustainable perspective. And then thinking about the whole lot of it from a product lifecycle perspective. So, if you think about it, sustainability starts from the very concept of a new design, a new product. You got to take it through product design. You take it through process development. You take it through the whole packaging design, regulatory compliance, so on and so forth. And right on to the end where you're talking about product disposal, recyclability, so on and so forth. So what we're trying to do is make sure that at every stage of that process, we're thinking about the sustainability of the product and how that will impact the environment and also our patients.
Yeah. Well, I want to unpack a lot of what you said. The first thing, the change management, changing the culture sounds very familiar. We do that. As I feel anytime we have a big initiative that we want to do in medicine, that sounded very familiar. But let's kind of level set a little bit. Sustainability may have different, may mean different things to different people. When we talk about it from the lens that you guys are looking at, what does it really mean?
Ultimately, it's ensuring that our products blend with the environment that they're being used in from the very beginning, from the concept phase right through to when they're finished use and they're being disposed of. That at every stage in that they don't damage the environment that they're being used in. And whether that's the way they're being, for example, the way they're being sterilized, which is important, whether it's the packaging that they come in and that has to ultimately be disposed of, that at each stage that we're minimizing the impact that that has on our environment. And ultimately that we, as much as we possibly can in producing those products, that we are as carbon neutral as we possibly can be.
Desiree, we should probably give a little bit of context about our world. By our world, I mean anesthesia and intensive care. Yeah. We have become very, very disposable for various different reasons on the journey. We decided not to reuse a lot of things we used to reuse. Mm-hmm. And by going down the route of having lots of disposable things for various different good reasons, we also create this really quite shocking pile each day of predominated by plastics and materials. There's quite a lot of tension there in trying to resolve those challenges.
There absolutely is. And to some extent, I mean, it's counterintuitive to think about reusable products in medical environment because obviously, the risk of infection and cross-contamination and so on is very real and a real issue. Having said that, I suppose when we think about it, the role that we can play in that is to, I suppose, produce those products in the most environmentally friendly way possible. We take it at a low level. You think about the energy you use to produce the product. Which is a very significant part of the whole life cycle of the product. The way we've approached it is very much from a basic level of, can we make the process that we use more sustainable? Can we get more from the same or more from less? And that's really the approach we've been taking. When you think about plastics, are the plastics we use, are they recyclable?
That was where I was going to take off. Are they?
Many of them are. Yeah. Many of them are.
And how do you ensure the collection of those disposable items so that they are indeed directed to a recyclable, if you will, swim lane?
Well, I suppose a couple of things. I think our customers are actually demanding that now and are actually doing that themselves. So it's not necessarily, we don't necessarily have to drive that end of the process. What we have to drive is the product design so that they can go into that cycle, into that swim lane, if you like. And it's very much a requirement. And we're seeing it more and more when we're asked to tender for business. We're asked, what's our sustainability? How is the product produced? What's the carbon footprint? How can they dispose of that product without damaging the environment? And our customers are very often, now in some cases there is, they are a biohazard, so you don't have any real control over how that is managed. But where the product isn't and doesn't become a biohazard, then we certainly have put a lot of effort and a lot of thought into the material we're using to make it as recyclable as possible.
And I think I'm hearing that the customers are becoming easy to work with. In other words, from the point of view of the fact that they're committed and have a mission to recycle, and you're offering them recyclables as much as, is that fair?
Very much so, yeah. Very much so.
To that note, is there a demand? Is the appetite sufficiently great from a consumer perspective to ask of, its provider, its client, that there is a recyclable or a green sensitive product? Does that differentiate the industry?
More and more, it is differentiating the industry. The medical device industry is probably lagging a little bit behind other industries, understandably so. But it is actually coming to the stage where if you don't have a responsible sustainability program, you're not going to be in the market. You're not going to be competitive. You're not going to get, customers are going to look for other alternatives. And we're seeing that more and more. And I suppose, look, one of the things that's interesting is that, and I talked a little bit about how we're driving this from a culture perspective. A lot of the engagement that we're getting in terms of sustainability is coming from our own employees. And they're very, very aware of the impact that the products that we make as a company have on the environment. And there's a lot of different initiatives that we have taken over time, everything from reducing our landfill to harvesting water from the roof, given that Ireland is an ideal place to
blessed with water.
Harvest water in that regard. But lots of other things. I mean, eliminating all of the disposables at the site, But then getting into much more serious territory where 25% of the energy we use on the site is actually solar power.
Mm-hmm.
So 25% of the energy that we're using to produce ventilators, to produce oxygen sensors, to produce video laryngoscopes is actually, even in Ireland, is delivered by
you
by solar
actually do
power.
get quite a bit of sun there.
Liam, my question is, because that's the culture, because that's the sort of essence of the way you do business, have you found that it's transformative to the employee level? In other words, do the people who leave work take that with them in their day-to-day?
Absolutely. It's really interesting because, and these are small things, but they are important and they do make a difference. We have a group of employees who have decided, for example, to set up a garden in the vicinity of the site. So one of our employees happens to be a horticulturist before he became a medical device manufacturer, and the impact that's had is it's quite amazing. I mean, people go out there to sit there for their lunch. They have their lunch there. It's a nice, peaceful, and the sense of, I suppose, of accomplishment through having done that is very palpable with the team and with the workforce, and we see it in terms of the engagement we're getting back, the engagement scores, the willingness of employees to become involved in green initiatives.
And Liam, you've mentioned the site a few times. We're assuming the site is in Ireland, but is that the case?
Yes, absolutely. The site is in the west of Ireland. It's in Galway. Now we have a number of sites in Ireland, and the site that I'm particularly referencing is a manufacturing location in Galway. But a lot of the initiatives that are taking place in that site are actually been replicated right across the globe, actually, I would say.
So most of Medtronic's products are developed in Ireland?
Medtronic has a significant presence in Ireland. Medtronic employ in excess of 4,000 people right across Ireland. So it's a very significant presence. A lot of people, a lot of R&D. We produce a lot of drug-eluting stent products are produced there. Some of our cardiac products are produced there. So there is a significant presence and a significant footprint in the country.
So as a clinician, when I am sitting there, getting all my stuff together in the morning, and I think about is what I'm looking at right now, like my can, my soft drink can, right? And the only thing I think about this is, it's recyclable. I'm going to throw it in the recycle bin. But it sounds like to me that there's a whole life cycle, and there's lots of places where you actually are contributing to the environmental or reducing environmental impact. And I just kind of want to make sure that we kind of stick a pin in that, because I don't think about the energy that was used to make this can, or that was used to make the product that I'm using in the OR. And I think that, that's something that we need to start considering too, because, sometimes you're like, I'm throwing away a lot of stuff here, but in fact, it actually has a lot less impact on the environment to use a disposable than it actually is to use a reusable.
That's a really good point. The energy required to take a disposable item and recycle it back through the process can very often be more than the energy required to produce a new product. So to manage the waste stream that comes from medical devices is in some ways more important than necessarily just trying to recycle them back into that medical device environment. And very often it's more important to ensure that they can be put to other uses, that you can reuse them in a different way. And that's what we're looking to do to a large extent. There's one little, I suppose, anecdote that I think is always very interesting. The site that I was talking about, based in Galway, is it's in the middle of quite a residential area. But many, many years ago, it was an oak forest. And some of the oak trees are still in the location. So they're over 100 years old. They're actually protected. They're well looked after at this point. But recently enough, we had a hive of bees decided to locate themselves in one of those oak trees. So everybody wanted to get the bees out of there, but we brought in a beekeeper to look at it, and he actually informed us that they were Irish black bees.
Wow.
And Irish black bees are quite rare.
Oh.
And they are resilient to a particular disease that has impacted the bee population right across Europe. They actually are resilient to lice, the lice that actually has...
Get in the the hives and stuff.
Exactly, and that has killed off a lot of the bee population. So they're much sought after. So we've decided to keep them. So we have our black Irish beehive just outside the door, and we're certainly maintaining the sustainability of that.
Well, we should, when we come over to the West Coast, we should arrange to come and see them. Well, if you'd agree to come and see us,
we would be delighted to have you, Monty and Desiree and Sal. Absolutely.
Well, Liam, thank you for taking the time to come over from Galway and enjoy this little bit of London sunshine.
Absolutely.
And chat with us about that. It's a really important topic, and I'm so glad we had the opportunity to sit down to talk about it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for listening to TopMedTalk. Again, you can find great conversations just like this one at TopMedTalk.com on your favorite podcatcher. Do have a listen. We have so many topics on there. Like Monty said, over 2,000 podcasts. Type something you're interested in. I'm sure you can find it. But you can also find us on social media, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook. We are there. Do check it out and have a fabulous day. Cheers.
TopMedTalk. Thanks for downloading TopMedTalk. Don't forget to subscribe via your podcatcher. Don't forget to check us out on social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And also, don't forget, TopMedTalk is the broadcasting arm of EBPOM, evidence-based perioperative medicine. We'd love you to find out more about that. If you check out ebpom.org, you can find low prices on some of the conferences we're organising around the world. Many of them are virtual and don't even involve you leaving your own home. Check out ebpom.org now.